meditation for me was such a wishy-washy thing. It was something that I didn't want anything to do with. And in my eyes, it was something that new age fake spiritual people did like Monday to Friday. And then they'd go to a festival and do drugs and alcohol and poison their bodies. And on the other hand, it was something that corporate people did for 50 minutes every day using an app on their phone, which is so backwards because, I mean, a phone is the reason why a lot of people need to meditate. They need to undo the damage that these devices are doing to us. So for me, yeah, it was the stigma around it. It was just very fake, and it never really was something that called to me. And that changed in 2020. I'd been living overseas for 5 years, and because of COVID, I had to come back home. And I remember literally getting off the plane and being absolutely devastated that I had to come home. I was having the best time over there, and I had the best job. I was a personal trainer, and I loved being in fitness, and I loved being on my feet all day. And I knew I could never have that career in Australia. I had this limiting belief that I couldn't fulfill that career in Australia. So I came back home with $19 in my account, and my parents are pretty disappointed. You know, they're quite ambitious people. They're academics, and I'm the oldest in my family, and they essentially were like, "What are you going to do with your life? You've got no money. You've got no engineering experience or office experience, and how are you gonna? Your career has to start now." And as much as I wanted to disagree with them, I didn't have a whole lot of other options. So I applied for some jobs, and I got a job in an office in the city, and I started going to work. So I went to work on Monday, I went to work on Tuesday, I dragged myself to work on Wednesday, and then on Thursday, I was driving into work. This is the fourth day, right, of my new job. And I almost got T-boned in traffic. I almost got into an accident. And my first instinct, as soon as I thought I was going to get hit, was, oh, if I get into an accident, I don't need to go to work today. And then my second instinct was, I might die today. But my first instinct was still, I didn't want to go to work. And for me, that was everything that I needed to quit my job. So I walked into the office at 9 a.m. and I told my manager I didn't want to work there, and I thanked him for the opportunity, and I said they'd done nothing wrong and it was just something that I didn't want to do. So I quit my job. I came home. Dad was at home, and he said, "What are you doing? It's 11 a.m. on a Thursday." And I said, "Dad, I quit my job today." And he said, "Why? Why would you do that?" And I said, "I don't know, but I think I'd rather be dead than working in an office." And he said to me, you are such a disappointment. Every single time I try and show you the right way to live, you do the total opposite." And I said, "I know, but I just don't know. I don't know what to do with me either. I'm also as confused as you are." So there I was. I had no money. I had quit this job. I knew I didn't want to work in an office, and I didn't have a whole lot of options. And I've always had a very broad skill set in terms of I'm a great designer. I love designing things on Photoshop. I love designing websites and business cards, and I've always been very good at that. And through university, I'd always tried to start a website or start websites selling products. And I think I started 7, and all 7 had sold $0. I started 7 in about 6 years. And selling all sorts of things, from phone cases to yoga mats. And I had lost a lot of money, and I had made $0, made no money, didn't make any sales. I think I made 1 sale in 7 years. So I was beginning to believe that wasn't something that I was very good at, or I didn't have that X factor. So a week later, I was getting a coffee with my cousin, and she said to me, she had just tried to do a 10-day meditation course, and she quit on day 2. And I said, "Why did you quit on day 2? You should have made the whole 10 days. Why did you quit?" And she said, "It was really hard. You had to be silent the whole 10 days. And then she said to me, "I don't think you could do it." And I thought about it. And you have to understand, I was back living with my parents, and I had my parents brooding over me every day, trying to get me to apply for work or get a job. And to me, 10 days in solitude sounded like heaven. I really needed some time to myself. And I went home and I signed up and I got in the next week. So a week later, I was driving in and I walked in, and one of the course facilitators said to me, "Are you sure you know what you're doing here?" And I said, "If this doesn't work, nothing's going to work." So there I was, and I didn't know this, but in this course, you weren't allowed to speak, but you also weren't allowed to give people eye contact, you weren't allowed to read, and you weren't allowed to write. So you had nothing. You had no stimulus at all. You were just sitting there meditating, and when you don't meditate, you're staring at a wall or you're staring at the grass. You're out in nature, but you have no sort of stimulus at all. It's just you and your mind. And because I came a little bit later, I didn't get to meet my roommate, and the silence had already started. So all I knew him by were his toes. I walked into my room and he was already there, and we were meant to be silent. So I just had to look down, and I just knew him by his toes. And that's how the whole 10 days went. It was one of the most challenging experiences of my life. I wanted to leave on day 2, and it felt like there was no end. I know 10 days sounds like a small amount of time, but remember, as you transmute time, right? So for me, 10 days felt like, I would say 10 months. It was such a long time, and I went through so many phases and so many deaths and rebirths in that 10 days. And the whole time I was thinking, I just want to live a life where I can just pay my rent, pay my bills, and be left alone. I don't want a lot. I just want to be left alone, and I just want to be able to eat food and sleep in a bed. And on the 10th day, they allowed us to speak. They lifted the silence. And I went straight to my roommate. I saw his toes, and I went up to him and I said, "Hey, I'm your roommate." And he said, "Hi, I'm Giorgio." And I said, "Hey, Giorgio, so what brought you here? Why did you decide to do a Vipassana?" And that was what the course was called. It was called a Vipassana. And he said, I have a business and I just needed a break from it. And that's why I did it." And I said, "Well, what kind of business do you own? Because I'm just so curious." I was like, "What kind of business?" And he said, "Oh, I have a website and I sell car parts." And yeah, we did around 100,000 last year, and it's just been so busy. I just needed a break from it all. And I was gobsmacked, because this is something I've wanted to do my whole life, and here this guy was that has been doing it and doing it really well. So I said, "Hey man, I'm going to pick your brain, because I've been trying to do this my whole life, and I don't know how you do this. I need to know what the secret is." So we stayed up till 4 a.m. that night, and we were whispering, and I asked him every question I could. I just wanted to gain as much knowledge as I could. And he told me step by step from how he built it from the beginning to the very end. And the crazy thing was, what he said was nothing new to me. I knew all of this stuff, and I had done the same thing, but it hadn't worked for me. So the next day, Dad picked me up. I was in the best mood. I was so happy, not just to go home, but I had this wealthy feeling inside of me. I don't know how else to explain it. I would call it an abundance, but I felt amazing. I felt like I was the richest person in the world, and I don't know why or how. And I remember questioning myself, going, "Why do you feel like that?" And I remember on the car ride home thinking to myself, "Why do I feel like this?" And it was because I knew that no matter what, I would always be able to stay at my parents' house, and that means I always had a roof over my head. And I also knew that my mum would make me any meal that I wanted every night, and I think that's better than 99% of the world, and I would say 90% of the country even. And just because of those two things, I felt incredibly wealthy. But I didn't have any monetary wealth, so to speak, and I wasn't bothered by that. For some reason, I had this knowing that it would come. Anyway, fast forward a week, Dad would be asking me, he said, "What's your plan? What are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know." And I was outside in the garden, and I was bonsai. I had my bonsai tree, and I was pruning it with these black carbon scissors that I got as a gift from my Japanese roommate who I lived with in Asia. And I was thinking as I was pruning that these scissors are amazing, and I wonder if you can get these in Australia. So I Googled around and I found some companies selling similar scissors. And at this point, I had just been given my 3 days worth of work paycheck from that job I'd started and quit. So it was like $400. And I used some of that to purchase these scissors from these Australian companies. And I worked out that some of these companies were just shipping from China or Japan. So these scissors took 2 to 3 weeks to arrive. And the other ones, they were shipping from Australia, but they were doing such a poor job of making it a nice experience. The communication was terrible, but not just that. When the items came, they were wrapped in plastic, and they just looked cheap. Even though you were paying $60 to $70 for them, it didn't feel like you were buying a high quality product. So I got in touch with my Japanese roommate and I said, hey, if I get 10 of these scissors, can you send them to me? And he said, sure, let me ask around. And at the same time, it was COVID, so we were plunged into a lockdown, and the government was offering stimulus checks for everyone. So I got around $1,500 as a stimulus check, and Rio, my Japanese roommate, contacted me. He said, hey, I can get 10 scissors for $800 sent to you via FedEx. And I said, sure, let's do it. So I gave him $800 and he had FedEx his scissors over. And in the meantime, while I was waiting, I built a website, and it's a beautiful website. I want to show you on the screen right now. And I built this in a week, and I listed lots and lots of items on this website, but I marked them all as out of stock, except for these scissors. So my whole idea with this was to make it look like I was a really busy, big company, but everything was sold out because I was so busy and all I had were these scissors. And then I marked them up to a healthy profit, and I ran a little Google Ads campaign. So I put them on Google as advertisements, and I spent around $100 on advertisements. And within 2 weeks, I had sold all of my scissors. Now, I'd got these scissors for $800, and that was 10, so they were $80 each. And I was pricing them at around $240 to $300 per scissor. So I had turned $800 to $3,000 within 2 weeks. And then with that money, I bought some more items, and I added some more items to my store. And that was in May 2020. And by December 2020, I had sold $180,000 of bonsai tools. And I was mind blown. I don't know how, to this day, I still think about it. And I think that sounds like a dream. It was crazy. I remember just being in my bedroom and just waking up to sales and packing stuff in my garage and sending it off. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. And to this day, I don't even know how I created that. All I know is those 10 days were critical for me to build that reality. Now, I don't sell bonsai tools anymore. And a big reason for that is they were really popular during lockdown. So I was very opportunistic. I didn't plan for this, but when I started this website, we were in lockdowns and people were just at home. And what were they doing? They were gardening, they were doing arts and crafts. So bonsai searches went up around 1,700%, 17 times. It was one of those things where you strike while the iron's hot and you just take advantage of it for the time. So I had made all those sales, and $180,000 for me was around $40,000 in profit, which was a lot more than $19. So, to make that kind of money in 8 months, less than 7 months, was an amazing feeling. And so a few weeks into the new year, I got a call from a customer, and she called up the work phone and she said, hey, my name's Susan. I purchased one of your bonsai kits. And I said, hey, Susan, what can I help you with? And she said, I would like to speak to your manager. And then I said, hey, I am the manager. What can I help you with? And she said, look, I love the way you've packaged this product. I love your branding. I love the website. I want to speak to your website guy and your branding and designer guy. And I said, Susan, I'm doing all of it. I'm just a guy in a bedroom. And she said, can we please hire you? And I said, yes, you can, but I'm never coming into the office. And not just that, that opportunity rolled on through word of mouth for me to get even more clients. And I've just been sort of riding that wave for the last 4 years. I get jobs and I do really good. I try my best and do a really good job with it. And then I get recommended by them to another client who then hires me as well. And it's just been a really beautiful journey these last 4 years. And I really put it down to doing my 10 days of Vipassana at the very beginning. I have since done 3 more sets, and they've all helped in various ways, but I can confidently say none of them have affected the kind of change that the original sit did. And I actually honestly believe that everyone should at least do it once in their life. I'm not saying that people will have the same experience afterwards that I will, and I actually think you won't. I don't think anyone will. I think our journeys are very unique, but I will say that if you go in with a pure, clear intention, and if you take it seriously, it will change your life. I think the silence itself is therapeutic, and it's quite magical to be able to clear your mind and to be able to allow your heart to speak, or your higher self to speak, instead of your mind just chattering all the time. But I think if you go in with a very clear intention, and not an intention like I want to make a lot of money, but an intention where you want to change a part of yourself, a foundational part of yourself, to the fiber. And I remember specifically being in a very scarcity mindset going into my Vipassana. Even though I didn't have a lot of financial wealth per se at the time, I still wanted that abundant mindset. And I also took it very seriously. I was up at 4 a.m. when you're meant to get up and meditate. I wasn't sleeping in. I was fasting through some of the meals. I wanted to be in the best physical shape possible to take advantage of the course. I made sure when I meditated that my back was completely straight. And it was painful for the first 2 or 3 days, sitting cross-legged on a floor with your back completely straight. But I disconnected from that pain. I tried to look past it and just focus on being on me, on inside me. But yes, I don't know what an experience like that would bring to you or another person, but I highly recommend it. And I think anyone that's watching my channel and that's subscribed to my channel and that's on this journey, I think they'd benefit from a Vipassana course. I think most major cities have centers, and if they don't, there are centers everywhere around the world. If you just Google it, there'll be one within a couple of hours driving distance from where you live for the most part. And it's all donation based, so you don't have to have a lot of money. It's just give what you can. And if you go in with no expectation, but also with a really nice intention to make yourself a better person, but also as a consequence, make the world around you better as well. You know, our internal reflects our external. So if we work on ourselves and try and be the best version of ourselves, it will naturally show in the world around us. I think everyone could benefit, and I'd be really excited to see someone else's story and how that's changed their life, because it is a life-changing experience, and it's a real honor and a real privilege that we get to be on that journey in this lifetime. Some people go 80, 90 years without ever discovering the universe that's inside here. And there is a universe inside of us that's just as big as a universe outside. Yeah, I just wanted to share my experience. And I think if that piques someone's interest and motivates them to go out and do a 10-day sit, then that's an amazing return on my investment. And I think I've done my job.